the pad, and it should be everybody in the world. Now then, crew, and welcome back to the Andy Mechanic YouTube channel. And finally, we've got some parts for Alan's CB750 K2. These parts are for the front brake. Remember, on the old brake, on the old bracket, should I say, we had lots and lots of play in that mount. It turned out that somebody had replaced the original pivot with a bolt. That's right, about 1 millimeter larger in diameter, and they drilled out the holes that runs through the aluminium, you know, in an effort to try and reduce the play again and give the whole construction another life. But again, of course, it's now worn and it's not suitable for use anymore, and they sure as hell can't drill it out anymore. My original plan was to make some bushes and a new pin, but that will be a modification, and this bike has to go through what we call certification here in New Zealand. It's not currently road legal, it's sort of become deregistered for some reason, and a modification to a brake component would cause it to fail that inspection. So I bit the bullet and I had to order some more parts, and what turned up is all that's available. I ordered basically everything to do with the bracket, a new pin, the two halves of bracket. Here we go, look, got two new bits, and you can see there, look, that's what it should look like when it's nice and new. And of course the pin was available, which is great news, and it's got the little groove in the middle as a grease reservoir, so it stays nicely lubricated. We've also got a few other bits and pieces. I'm going to go through them nice and slowly because you know, this brake seems to be quite popular on these 4-cylinder models of this sort of era. We've got the little bolt that works alongside that sort of spring. We'll come to fitting that bit later on. That's the part number for the bolt. There was no part number for the spring, but we can get that off the diagram that I've got on the screen on the laptop a bit later on. There were a couple of washers as well, both the same part number. There you go, all genuine Honda parts. There's obviously a little M6 nut that goes on the end of that bolt, which is pretty handy. And we got some more washers. These are to do with the mounting bolts that hold that bracket to the left-hand fork leg, isn't it? So there you go. So we've got a couple of washers in there, and the part number for those, there you go, look, is that. I think that one's the same, just to be sure. There you go. What else have we got? Ah, yes, we got some replacement mounting bolts, because if you remember, looking in the box, somebody had used, well, they'd replaced the bolts, but with ones that were threaded all the way down, and that's bad news. They need to have a shank on them, and these may not be the correct tensile strength either, so we're going to replace those where we can. I think there were two of those, so we've got, fortunately they were available, which is good news. So there's one in that bag there, look, that's the part number there. And I think there was a second one. There was. Not sure if they're both the same. Are they both the same part number? Let's have a look. No, different part number. So that's the other one. So we'll work out which is which when we come to assemble and fit the thing back on the bike. And we also got, by the looks of it, yes, two little locking washers as well in there. Look, one in that bag there, and that's the part number. I think that could be the same part number. So look, it is. So we've got two with the same part number, so two of those locking washers as well. So all that's to do with the mounting of the assembled bracket, you know, onto the bike itself. What I'm interested in at the moment is fitting this part onto the caliper, and to do that, you see these two large cap head bolts. We've got to undo those, split the caliper, and then mount it onto the new piece. And there should be somewhere in the manual a torque setting for these. Hopefully we can find it. If not, FT. And of course we'll be putting some thread lock on the end of those threads in the casting there, because again, the last thing you want is this thing to come loose. Front brakes are usually pretty important, aren't they, on motorcycles? Right, so without further ado, let's get the front brake reassembled on Alan's bike. Here we go. Hopefully, hot iron device. Hopefully it's going to fit nice and nice and snug. These are aluminium jaws, by the way, in this device. It shouldn't cause any harm. That's the old part anyway. There we go. Right. Number 8 Allen key. Don't know how tight they're going to be. Not very tight. Not very tight at all, to be honest. And I've not been in here before, so this is all virgin stuff. I guarantee somebody else has pulled it apart though at some point. Right. Now, I've not pulled one of these apart before, so we're going to learn as we go. I'll take you on a journey, see what we can work out. Right, bolt number 1. Bolt number 2. Okay, let's just pull that back. Of course, there's the brake pad. That's the old bracket. And, oh, look at that. It's a little comparison. Oh, yeah. That's interesting. Right, time for a close-up. Now, you remember... There we are, look, we're in shots. You remember all that that movement that there was there on the pivot? Well, it looks like, it does look like, compared to the new one, yeah, I would suggest, it's only my thoughts, but if you look down here, we've got a line that isn't parallel to the bracket. It goes off at a slight angle, and it's not a casting line. And there's a distinctive step coming down by probably, oh my word, probably, let's have a look, probably 2 or 3 millimeters. And that tells me that this bracket, when the brake's been applied, has been dropping down so much it's been catching on the disc itself and wearing the bracket. So again, there's a slight burr, yes, on that edge there. So there's definitely been way too much play in that original pin at this end, you know, the actual joint, to allow that to happen. That definitely shouldn't happen. So again, a good little telltale sign. If you're doing one of these and you see that mark where the aluminium's been worn, you'll absolutely definitely need to replace this bracket. It's not good. You've got way too much play in this pivot point. Right, let's get rid of the store string. There we go. Right, so we now need to install that into the 2 halves of the caliper assembly. But first, it tells us to put some grease in there. So let's take a little look at the manual and see where we should be applying some grease. So it tells us in the manual, and the manual's not that comprehensive, to be honest. They weren't quite as good back in those days. It says apply grease here. So if I rather use my big sticky finger, use a pen, we've got an arrow that comes down to, that's your brake disc in the middle. That's one brake pad, and that's another brake pad. And it says to put some grease at the back in the recess in the actual caliper body of where the pad sits. And again, well, actually, it's pointing towards the circumference of that component, so rather than down the back. So I think round there and round there, obviously to aid the whole thing sliding in and out properly, so your brakes don't stick on or rub on the brake disc. Okay, well, we'll pull those pads out and take a look, see what we see. Oh, and the grease we need to use is silicon sealing grease, temperature range of 67 to 392 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, that's no use to me. 55 to 200 degrees C. That makes more sense. Do not use molybdenum grease, known as brake grease. Wow, there you go. You see, it tells you not to use something as well, which is pretty cool. Good job. Right, let's take a little look inside. Okay, so this is the inner pad, and that's got a peg on it that goes through that hole there, and we can see there's a little bit of rust and stuff because the bike's been stood for a very long time. And I would say that the manual is telling us to put some grease around this edge here to help that pad, you know, move around as it needs to. This one actually shouldn't really move at all, to be honest, but it says to put some grease around here on this edge here. And on the main caliper, the outer pad, much larger friction surface on there, so we've got quite a lot of rust. I'm going to clean all that off with a wire brush, and then we'll have a look around and see what kind of grease we've got in stock that's going to do the trick. So let me get that cleaned up and we'll crack on. So when you buy new brake pads, you obviously get this whole big thick steel backing plate as part of it, which is pretty cool. Right, that's that one clean. Now for this one isn't anywhere near as bad. Obviously bear in mind when you're working this kind of stuff, if you're going to reuse the brake pads, don't get grease on the friction material, because you won't get it out again once it's in. So try and keep it nice and clean. Fortunately my hands aren't too bad at the moment. Should be wearing gloves as always, but you know, Andy forgets, he's too busy filming. And there's plenty of meat on these pads, so there's no need to replace them. Okay. Wonder if these are genuine or not. And you can see there, look, where there's the drilled holes in the steel, and this is the friction material that's basically riveted. Essentially, it's molded into the steel to hold that friction material in place. Pretty cool. Okay, what's that one like? That's pretty good in there, isn't it? Okay. Excellent. Right, I now need to clean out inside there, because there's a lot of rust inside there, and give that a bit of a wire brush too. Because now's the time. Do it once, do it right, you know? Never easy doing stuff to camera, is it? Where's Tool Girl Holly? She could be doing this for me. She's brilliant at cleaning things up, I tell you. I'll do for that one. Now, ideally, I'd like to put this in the vise, but it's not really anywhere where you can really clamp onto it properly without preventing access here, so I'm going to have to hold it. But the good news is I've got my forged plasters just in case, because I do sense an element of blood loss on this one, or at least a bit of scuffing anyway. That's coming up a treat, is that? Oh, I reckon that'll do. Good job, rotary wire brush. Perfect. Okay, so now we've cleaned everything up. That one goes in there. We're going to need some grease, and that one's going to go in there. So let's do this one first. Now, grease-wise, it said silicone grease. Well, the only silicone grease I've got is in a spray can, and to be honest, move that out of the way, it's not really, I mean, it's good stuff, but I want more of a greasy grease rather than a spray grease. Now, Jared does tell me that eventually it does, you know, the carrier does evaporate away and it leaves a residue of nice grease, but I need volume. I need a bit more than what that's going to give me. So, unfortunately, the only other thing that I've got, unfortunately, the other stuff I've got is the standard copper paste. Now, this one goes up to 1100 degrees C, so I reckon that's going to be just fine. And this is what we'd normally use on brakes anyway, to be honest. And it's not the molybdenum grease that it says not to use, so I'm going to use this. Pretty sure it's going to be just fine. Right, so where do we start? Well, probably a pair of gloves first. And of course, a rag. Always need a good rag, don't you? Okay, so very important we don't get grease on the brake pad itself. And when we're doing this kind of stuff, less is more. That's what I'm told. So I'm just going to put that around there. I'm sure we'll get quite a long way around what we've got on there already. Don't need a lot. And let's face it, it had nothing before, did it? Absolutely nothing whatsoever. Now, somebody on the comments will no doubt tell me off for using this, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be okay. It's going to provide lubrication and it's heat resistant. What more do you want? Just stick a bit around the back as well, look. It's not going to get in the way. Okay. Definitely haven't got any on the brake pad whatsoever, which is good. Those little copper traces that you see in the pad material, well, that's in the pad material, that's not what I've put on. So I'll pop that. In fact, just bear with me, because normally we'd also put a little bit on the piston as well, on this sort of stuff. So we'll stick a bit on there, look, and that'll stop any kind of corrosion later on. Right, sorry if I was off camera there. Not easy being as bad as me, you know. Okay, you're constantly going for your rag with this stuff because it gets absolutely everywhere. Okay, so we'll drop him in there, and he's now nicely greased up. That one's done, so stick him over there. Let's get this side done. Okay, so again, we've got to go just around the outside. This is a lot thinner, so we're going to be a little bit careful with this one. A little brush would be good, wouldn't it, for this kind of thing? Trying to not to get any grease on my left hand, so that there's no way it's going to get transferred onto the brake pad material. Because the bike will get a brake test when it goes for certification. Oh, saying that, I got a little blob on my finger, didn't I? Right, we're not far off. There we go, look, I reckon that'll do the trick. And again, a bit on the back. Just pretty standard stuff for automotive, to be honest. Most of the paints go off, so it'll need something to stop it rusting. There we go, look, back in the centre of the screen, Andy. Useless. Okay, almost there. It's difficult doing close-ups. Okay, so we'll pop that one in there. So they're now greased up and ready for assembly. Okay, so we've got the two halves and we've got the new bracket. So we'll stick him down there like that. That's going to go. Jeez, honestly, it's a really small working area on camera. There we go, look. I should put an X marks the spot on the bench, look. There we are, that's where you can see. Okay, so that goes on there like that. And then this one drops on the top without losing the brake pad. So we'll try and hold that little lug in place. There we go. Okay, so all we need now, that's going to stay put. Where's my little tub of stuff? That might work. There we go. Right, so what we need now is to clean these up, get rid of any kind of grease residue on those threads, and then we can apply a bit of thread lock to them. So, time for the wire brush again. I think we'll finish it off with a nice bit of brake cleaner as well, and a clean rag. That's one. Oh, it'd be good to get a front brake back on this bike. Yeah, it's actually quite difficult pushing it in and out of the garage because it's a bit of a slope on the outside and there's no brakes on this thing at the moment. And the last thing I want to do is drop Alan's bike and get very upset. Right. Okay, let's go and find some thread lock. Right, said Fred, let's just shuffle that one out of the way for a minute because we're going to be brake cleaning now. Constantly trying to do things to camera here, obviously. That's one. There. Two. Nice clean rag. Now, if you do this, dig your nail into the threads and then just wind it out, and that usually gets it nice and clean. There we go, look. How's that? It's like a new one. Oh, yes. I like that. It's amazing how much cack you get off these things when you clean them up. That'll do nicely. Okay, right, bring back our temporary assembly. Now, obviously this needs to be disassemblable, so we're going to use the Forge K120, which is the blue thread lock, which allows for disassembly at some point in the future. Now remember, less is more, so we'll stick him in there. Hopefully it's going to line up for us. Yes, look at that. Right, we'll get rid of our tube before I squirt a lot of copper paste everywhere. Good job, tube. It came in multi-purpose, that one. Okay, same again, Sam. There we go. Right. Just double checking that pin's still there, otherwise that pad's never going to go where it needs to go, but I think we're good. Right, oh, I've got my glove. There we go. See, top, I even labelled it up. Oh my word. Get back. Right, there we go. Perfect. Right, they are where they need to be. There's no copper paste on the brake friction material. So all we need to do now is tighten these up to torque. So I'm going to have a hunt through the service manual, see if we can find a torque setting for these. Don't hold your breath. Nope, there's no torque setting in the service manual that I can find for those two bolts that hold the two halves of the caliper together on that bracket. So I've googled M10 torque spec and it says 63 Newton meters is about the maximum you want to go to. So we'll do it 63 Newton meters with some thread lock, which I tell you now will be a lot tighter than it was before, but I reckon it's right. I don't want them coming loose. I don't want to pull the threads either, so let's go for 60 Newton meters just to give it a little bit of a margin, because this is an old bike, don't forget. Okay, let's get it put back in the vise and get the torque wrench out. He who dares, Rodney. He who dares. Do them evenly. Make it look professional. bad. Ooh. Phew. Cool, yeah. I'm just going to wedge a bit of cardboard. A bit of a trick from mountain bike stuff is this. Wedge a bit of cardboard between these two brake pads for now, because they keep falling out. And there is a risk, I noticed, of getting some of that copper paste on the actual, there we go, look, on the actual friction material. So by doing that, it's just going to keep everything snug where it should be for now. So we can move on. So the next job is going to be installing the pivot. Now it gets a little bit technical now. It's not over technical, but it is a little bit technical. I have marked which is top because, like an idiot, you could put it the wrong way around, I suppose. As a guide, the split pin, the hole here for the retainer for the pin, has a little split pin down here, and this is the original Honda part. How cool is that? So this needs to be greased, obviously, otherwise it's going to wear. And again, I've searched through the service manual and I can't find any indication of what grease to use on this, so I'm just going to use some normal grease. I don't think it's going to get over hot, to be honest. I think we should be okay with some regular grease in there. I could use copper paste, but you tend to find that copper paste will actually go a bit hard over time and it doesn't lubricate that well as compared to normal grease. So we're going to go with normal grease and see how we get on. Also, there should be some little O-rings that fit in these recesses, one at either end, again to retain the grease in that pivot. Now unfortunately, no O-rings turned up in the parts kit, but I just want to double check on the screen to see if we can get them. If not, I'm going to have to revert back to a generic O-ring. Now, this is a website called Partzilla. They're not a sponsor, just actually a really useful website where you can get lots of parts for your old Hondas and stuff. And so you can just do a Google search on partzilla.com. The address is up there, look. And this is for the K2. And this is the diagram of that front caliper, or the bracket, should I say. And you can see the two halves here. Now, 24 is the O-ring, and there's one top and one bottom. So if we scroll down on here to 24, there we go, look, O-ring 10 by 1.7, not available twice. That is the part number 91259-300-000, but they're not available, and that's why I didn't get sent them, because you can't get them anymore, it's too old. So we're going to have to rake through my O-ring box and see if we can find something that will do the trick. Whilst we're here, you'll also notice that 19 appears top and bottom as well. And these are really thin little shims. If we look up, just scroll up a little bit. There we go, look. There's two different sizes. This one, where's my pen? This one here is 0.1 millimeters. And the bottom one, it says they're both classed as 19, which is a bit weird, but the bottom one is 0.2 millimeters. Now we did get sent a 0.2 millimeter shim. We didn't get a 0.1. So we'll see if we can fit one of those. I imagine that they're to be fitted if needed, if there's any additional play to be removed. But we'll find out. So let's get these O-rings matched up out of my box if we've got any, and then we'll see what it's like once it's sort of dry fit before we put any grease in it. Here we go. O-rings. So we'll get rid of that for now. Seems like such a small working area. This is a box of O-rings that I put together quite some time ago, and they were supplied by this chap actually, Luke West, up in Auckland. Very, very helpful guy. So if you're in New Zealand and need O-rings, he's the chap to go and see. So I don't know what we got. Use my little screwdriver because I can't fit my fingers in those holes. Well, that's a little bit small. Let's try a bigger one. Came out of there, I think. Let's try that one. Need something that's got a bit of meat to it. Oh, there we go, look. Does it sit proud? Not really, but it is going to seal against the pin. Yes, it will. Oh, look at that. Perfect. So that will create a seal. Good job. Okay, so we need 2 of those. There's 1. Got a few spares as well, which is good news. That's 2. They look the same. Oh, that one looks a thinner section. I reckon that's out of that box. Let's try that one. Hey, come back. Are they both the same? Yes. Perfect. Right. We'll stick them on the lid. We can use that to keep them nice and clean. Okay, so we're going to do a dry fit. So we'll leave the O-rings out for now. Let's see if that's right, top, if we need a shim in there or not. So if we can get a shim in there. So pop that pin in. Let's stick it in the vise. We'll clamp it in the vise here, and then we'll see how much movement there is. Right, she's all mounted with the vise. Pins in. There's no grease in there. There's no O-rings in there, obviously. And I've set another I've set a DTI up just to sit on the end, just to give us a rough idea of how much vertical movement there is due to, you know, clearance on that pin. So we're at 0 at the moment. Now each increment on that DTI is 0.01 of a millimeter. So every 10 is 0.1 of a mil. So let's see what we've got. That's pushing it down. Well, so we've got basically half a millimeter. Yeah, or just, yeah, about half a millimeter of movement, which is about as good as we're going to get, I think, based on the design. And this is why they don't use this kind of thing anymore, because it's not very good, to be honest. But we have got the option of a shim. And they did send me a shim. This I've written on there because I measured it. It's a 0.2 millimeter shim. So let's see if we can fit that shim and reduce that movement as per the manual. Oakley dokley. It's a very old shim. It's even a bit rusty, look. So I could always, you know, clean it up and it end up being a bit thinner if it's a bit too tight, but we'll see if it's going to go in there or not first. So I think we can leave the pin in and see if we can get it in the gap. Is there in fact any movement vertically? Oh man, there really isn't. There really isn't. I don't think that's going to fit in there. I don't even think a 0.1 shim would fit in there, in all honesty. I can't even see a gap in it. So it's going to go in as it is. We'll save that shim. We'll put it somewhere very safe, so when this starts to wear a little bit, then maybe it can be fitted to try and reduce that movement. But it's not really the proper way of doing it, is it, to be honest? It's a shim in the wrong place. It's not movement up and down that we're trying to stop. It's movement side to side on this pin. This is really just a, well, yeah, doesn't work in my book. So we'll stick him over there somewhere safe. That'll go in Alan's little parts bin. And now we can pull this apart and we can grease it up, fit the O-rings, try and get them both in at the same time. Be fun. Where's my O-rings gone? There we go. Right, bit of grease. Stick some grease on the old pin first. There we go, look. Bit extra in the, well, in fact, let's get that first O-ring on, because that's going to sit through there. We can't, can we? It's got to be in. It's got to be in. Hang on, let's just back the camera off a bit. That's better. Hopefully you can see what's going on now. Not too close. You can get too close sometimes, can't you? Right, a bit of grease in there. I know most of it's going to come back out again. Okay, now O-rings. One in there and one in there. Right, it could be a rag. Oakley dokley, right, top. Whee! Don't do that. Oh yes. Right, let's get rid of the excess grease. Lots of excess grease. Get it now before it migrates over everything. Okay. Right. That feels really good actually. Really, really good. Okay. So the next job is to align the pin so we can see the hole through here. That's a close-up. I think maybe your eyesight's better than mine, so tell me when we're there. If I can turn it, some pliers, hang on. Okay. Trying to do this without my hands getting in the way. Right. Can you see down that hole there? Probably not. Let's see if we can get it twizzled around till it's in the right place. Geez, it could be a trial and error thing. Where's my little poker stick thing? If I just hold that there, as I rotate it, it should drop in when it's in the right place. Look at that. Right. Oh, brilliant. Because I couldn't see anything there. Right, so this is the outside. That's the inside, so we want that way around. Coolio. Okay. Where's my pliers? See if we can get that bent over now. Point of no return now, isn't it? There we go. I'll get those nice and flat. Done. Bloody good. Right, should we get one more test to see if the grease has made any difference? Probably hasn't. Not really a very accurate test, to be honest, because the grease is going to get pushed out of the way as soon as any kind of force on it, but let's have a little look. So basically doing the same as I was before. Maybe we're down to that 0.4 of a millimetre, a little bit less. It's just a weird design, isn't it? Not perfect. Right, so we're going to save that little shim for another day because it doesn't fit. If I had the 0.1 of a mil, I might just be able to squeeze it in there, but there's no way this is going to go in. So we'll keep it somewhere very, very safe. In fact, I'll put it back in the big bag that it came in. That's right. They didn't want me to lose that one, did they? Okay, so we've still got a fair few new parts left. We've got all the mounting bolts, or 2 out of 3 mounting bolts to hold the bracket onto the fork leg. And we've also got that pin, a little bolt, special bolt, and the spring to fit, which they call adjustment. That's to adjust, I suppose, the position of the caliper relative to the disc based on pad wear. That's my take on it all. Okay, so let's get this slapped back on the bike, and then I think I've also got a new brake pipe to make up because I wasn't very happy with the old brake pipe. We're going to have to reuse the unions, I think. I don't think I've got any of that particular thread size. No idea what it is, but we can make one up, that's not a problem. And then we can get the brakes bled up, or brake bled up, and then it'll have a brake again, which will be nice. But that's going to be about the last bit in this particular episode, I would say. Okay, and of course, all bolts that hold the bracket to the fork leg must have thread lock. It's a brake component. You don't want it falling off. Okay, to the bike. I'm going to pull the front wheel out, just to make it a lot easier to film, a lot easier to get in. And it does actually say in the manual to have the front wheel out when you're fitting the brake caliper. So I'll do that. Give me a second. Now, just before we come to install the caliper on its new bracket, front wheel's out by the way, I just want to double check which bolts go where. There are 3 bolts that hold this bracket onto the fork. We've got 1 through this hole, 1 through this hole, and 1 through this hole. I am missing 1 of those 3 bolts, but I don't know which one. So let's take another look at that parts diagram on the laptop and see if we can work out what the length is of the missing bolt. Right, so look at the diagram. This is 16 is the bolt that uses the little spring for the adjustment, so we can ignore that for now. We've got one of the main mounting bolts here, 26, and another one, 25. But for the life of me, I was searching around the diagram and I could not see, maybe I'm blind, but I could not see the third bolt. However, looking down on the parts list here, we've got, so where's 25? We've got an 8x40, that's 8mm metric obviously, by 40mm long. So we've got two options of those, different part numbers depending on the frame serial number. We've then got 26, which is this bolt here, that one, and there's two options again depending on frame, both the same price, which is nice. That's an 8x50, so there's an 8x40, an 8x50, and then the third one, which is 27, that's not shown on the diagram, again two options, that's an 8x35. So let's go and measure what we've got, because I don't know which ones we've got. Let's whichever one we're missing, we should have a 35mm, a 40mm, and a 50mm. But there's some weird camera angles on today, isn't there? Okay, we'll get our verniers. Let's just zero that. There we go. Okay, these are the two bolts that we've got, and this one is doing it with the camera. How cool is that? All right, that's got to be the 40, hasn't it? There is, damn it. So we've got a 40. This one's longest. This has got to be the 50, hasn't it? Come on, focus, damn you. Right. Yeah, okay. So we're missing the 35mm. So we know that the missing bolt needs to be 35mm long. Excellent. So we've got bolts 25 and 26. They're the two longer ones. And, well, I don't know. Which holes do they go through? On modern diagrams you have a little dotted line and it shows you which hole it goes through, but that one, 25, seems to line up with that hole there, the top hole, and 26 seems to line up with that bottom hole, but I could be wrong, to be honest. It's very hard to see on here. However, what's more important is the washers that need to go on. We've got a 32 and a 31, so geez, long way down. Okay, 31 is a plain washer and 32 is a spring washer, right? So we know where those washers that are in the bags go as well, and it's going to be the spring washer first and then the plain washer. Correct. Right, let's do that. So it's good to get things double checked, isn't it, to make sure that we're right. Okay, where's my pick? Picks are good for undoing stuff. Open up bags. Right, so we've got spring washer, we've got fiddly a plain washer. So spring washer first, then the plain washer. We'll find that, or either we'll find or we'll make up a 35mm bolt once these two are holding it in place. And we know where it goes and everything. Oh, I'm pushing my luck here. There we go. Okay, so spring washer again, and then the plain washer. Right, we're good to go. Okay, 40mm bolt first. Bit of thread lock. There we go. Now, pretty sure that I am certain it goes in this hole here. So, offer Mr. Caliper up, pop that through, and just start winding that one in. There we go. Right, stay. Next. You're going to be asking me for a torque setting for these, aren't you? Again, don't hold your breath. I'll have a look, but I don't know. Right, see if we get those wound in a bit further. Looking good. It's always nice to fit new parts, isn't it? Especially on such an old bike. It's good to buy these now because later on you might not be able to get them. So it's sort of future-proofing the bike, isn't it, really? There we go. Okay, so we still need a 35mm long M8 bolt that's got a shoulder on it to fit in this hole. With another, oh, they didn't send me extra washers, did they? Doesn't they did. That's weird because these are available. Very strange. So I'll have to have a hunt round for some flat washers, or a flat washer and a spring washer as well, and then we can get that one bolted up, get them torqued up. Then we can install that adjuster screw. Excellent. It turns out 35mm bolts are pretty hard to come by. Extensive searching found one that was the right size, the right length, right pitch, right thread, and not in bad nick, to be honest. So we're going to use that one, and that's as good as it's going to get. Unfortunately, it's a shame that they didn't supply the right ones, or the third bolt with the job, because I'm pretty sure it must be available, really. Super job. Right, we see a torque setting for those now. As I thought, nothing in the manual. So, M8, we're going to do it 20 Newton meters. It's pretty standard for most M8 bolts on motorcycles, is 20 Newton meters. So, there we go, that's 1, 2, 3. If you know what this should be and you've got it in a manual, send me an email with a link or something, or an extract of the manual, because it'd be good to know, but I couldn't find it anywhere. Right, next job is this little adjuster bolt, because you can see the whole thing just swings around at the moment helplessly. And that little adjuster bolt with the spring just helps to control the position of this caliper relative to the disc. And I imagine it would need to be adjusted, you know, as the pads wear. But I don't think this bike's going to get enough riding for that. We're not far off at all. So what did Honda send us, courtesy of Car Tire Motorcycles, by the way, as regards the bits? We've got very few little bits left over, actually. So we've got the bolt, and now we can open that up. So we've got the special bolt, which is this one here, look. And I think going in the old bits box, yes, actually had the original bolt, but it was a bit worn. It had been chattering around in the old bracket, which is just in there, look. You see that hole is slightly overlated. It's sort of like a teardrop. It drops down at the bottom. Another reason for changing this bracket, well, actually, sorry, that way around. It goes up. There's a peak in it there, look, upside down. So you've got that, you can see it on the light. Yeah, pretty cool, eh? Okay, so that is knackered, but we replaced it anyway. So we're going to use a nice new bolt, and they sent me a single M6 nut, which is not a nylock, but it does have little serrations. You see that on there, look, on the back, just to dig it in. And of course a nice new spring. But they also sent 2 washers, which are the same, try to read upside down, yes, same part number. So we've got 2 of these. So I imagine that one of these goes on either side of the fork. You don't want the spring sat against aluminium, because it's going to chatter away and dig away at the aluminium. So it needs a nice steel seat to sit against. So we'll use one of the washers for that. It shouldn't make any difference if it's wrong, because at the end of the day the spring just, it's variable length, isn't it, end of the day. And then we've got the other one, which I think should sit on the side with the nut, because you don't really want the nut digging into the aluminium fork, because, you know, again, it's not going to last very long. So I think we've got what we need. Let's go and check the diagram on the parts catalogue and see if we're right. Okay, so 16 is the bolt. That just sits directly against the bracket, and then the spring sits directly against the other side of the bracket. So there's no washer between sort of the pivot bracket and the spring. Will that move like that? It will, won't it? Now obviously this bolts to the fork directly. It doesn't show the fork, so it's not really too much help, but they're only showing a single washer, which is washer 30, washer plain 6mm, quantity 1. Well, they've sent me 2, so I really think we should use both of them. Put one on the spring side against the fork. I don't think it makes any difference at all, so we'll do that. Okay, that's as good as it's going to get, isn't it, really, to be fair? We're dealing with some pretty crappy diagrams. Does it say anything in the service manual? I don't think it does. It doesn't really give you much help, does the old service manual? So I'll scroll back and see if there's anything on the, you see there, look, if I zoom in on there, sorry about the picture quality, again, that's the bolt there, look, straight into the recess on that bracket. Come further down, there might be another diagram. There we go. So again, that doesn't tell us anything at all. It's completely useless. And I think that's about it. I think just tells us stuff. Yeah. Okay. Management decision. Let's do what Andy thinks is right. Right. Hopefully it will keep focus for you. It's a bit fiddly, this one. So, bolt, that needs to go in. Oh, this is a special one. It's got a little groove for your screwdriver. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Right, so that needs to go in there. Now, we've already seen on the diagram the spring goes directly against the aluminium, which goes against my grain a little bit. And because we've got 2 washers, I want to put one on the back side here. I know there isn't one on the diagram, but that's where I want it to go. And maybe we should lubricate those threads a little bit as well. I think we should. Bit of oil. Yes. Let's get some oil. Okay. Just a drop is all we need. Come on, Mr. Oil Can, you can do it. As Ben used all my oil again. Nope, there we go. That'll do. Get that in the threads. Don't want a big blob anyway, do we? Right. Good old trousers. Okay, in there she goes. And we just got to sort of nurse that into the, there we are, into the thread hole. Come on, you can do it. Flat screwdriver required. Okay. Oh, threads are good, it's nice. And you can see now the purpose of it. It's that the pads don't rub on the disc all the time, basically. I'd like to meet the person that designed this. I really would. I mean, yeah, I suppose you can lock that off because that's threaded inside here, so you'd have to hold this with a screwdriver and then use a spanner, obviously, to lock it off and just to, so it maintains position. But of course, it does allow the caliper, when it's applied, because the piston's going to go that way, because it's on this side, the claw at this side of the caliper is then going to go that way. So essentially, the caliper is going to do that. So that's why it has to have that movement. But when it's in the rest position, the brakes aren't being applied, you don't want either of the brake pads to be rubbing on the disc, hence this adjustment. Bloody good. I like that. I like the idea of how they've solved a problem that they shouldn't already have. That's why we have sliders on modern day calipers, you know, sliding calipers, not fixed calipers, obviously. But you can also see the problem is that the caliper, because it's pivoting from here, it operates in an arc. So your brake pads are going to wear a bit weird, to be honest. Yeah. Anyway, such is life. Okay, well, we can't tighten that up until the front wheel's back in, and then we can set the final adjustment. So I reckon that's probably next, isn't it? Now, with the aim of trying to be efficient, I think now will be a perfect time to refit the front mudguard before the front wheel goes back in. Because to fit it with the wheel in position is a bit of a ball ache, to be honest. So I'm seeing it hanging up from the ceiling. I've got all the nuts and bolts for it somewhere. So I'm going to fit the front mudguard and then carry on with the video. So give me 2 minutes. Whiz off and get yourself a nice pint of cider, a little bit of ice, and I'll see you shortly. As if by magic, the shiny front mudguard is back on the CB750 K2, as is the front wheel installation. All done. So what we need to do now is adjust that caliper using that little adjustment bolt as per the manual's information. So let's do that right now. Right, brake caliper adjustment. This is what Mr. Honda says. The brake caliper must be adjusted so that there is a small clearance between the fixed friction pad, that's the inner one, and the brake disc. This adjustment is made in the following manner. Figure 14-15, which is, I don't know, just over there, look. Right. 14-15, and it's got a little window here. So it says raise the front wheel off the ground. It is using a suitable prop. It is. It then says loosen the caliper stopper bolt lock nuts. That's the big screw. Turn the stopper bolt in direction A, which is clockwise, until the friction pad contacts the brake disc. Right, so it's going to swing the caliper towards the disc until the friction pad contacts the brake disc. When the hang on, we're off screen here. When the wheel is rotated, some resistance should be noticed. So it's dragging basically. Whilst rotating the front wheel, turn the stopper bolt in direction B. Well, that's not possible because there's spokes in the way, Mr. Honda. Until the front wheel rotates freely, but we can do it in steps, can't we? Turn the stopper bolt in direction B, anti-clockwise. I don't know why they couldn't just say anti-clockwise. An eighth to a quarter turn further and tighten the lock nut. That will set the clearance. Okay, that seems easy enough. Off we go. Right, this is the best sort of shot that I can get you here. Where's my little pointer? That is the stopper bolt, adjustment bolt here, look, with a big flat head. So at the moment, wheel spins freely. Notice you can't adjust that bolt with the wheel turning because, well, we've got spokes in the way, haven't we, Mr. Honda? Okay, so we're going to turn it in clockwise, as it says. We'll do it in quarter turns. That's quarter of a turn. Nah, not really dragging yet. Let's do some more. I choose quarter of a turn because, you know, it's easy. Okay. It's changed note, but it's still not really dragging yet. It said some drag has to be noticeable, some resistance. Right, eighth of a turn. Alright, well, I'd say there's definitely some resistance there now. It doesn't spin as quickly. It is definitely dragging. And it said to back it off until it stops dragging. So we'll do it in like eighth turns. Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty free, isn't it? Okay. And it said to back it off another eighth to a quarter of a turn. So we'll try an eighth first. That's another eighth. I reckon that'll do, don't you? It's quite rudimentary, really. I think this style of brake is always going to make a bit of a noise. It's always going to have a tinkly noise, isn't it, on the when the wheel's rotating. Well, that'll do. I used to have a GN250 that used to make exactly the same noise all the time, every day, every hour, every minute of riding, even when it was parked. No, not really. Okay, what's left to do? I've forgotten. Actually, I jumped the gun. I forgot to tell you to tighten the lock nut on the adjustment screw. Geez, let's go and do that now. So there he is. We can wind down the nut. What we don't want to do is disturb the position of the bolt, because we've set that now. So we're going to use a little flat screwdriver in there. I suppose you could adjust it from the outside while it's turning. Maybe that's the idea. And then you could do it with the wheel spinning. But there's not a lot of purchase on this. You can see it getting rounded off pretty quick. I think we did it the right way. Right, so I'm just holding the bolt's position now with my little bitty screwdriver whilst just tightening up the lock nuts. There we go. Done. Right, next job is the brake pipe. This particular bike doesn't have the flexi pipe running all the way to the caliper. It has a bit of hard, brake line for the last sort of, well, what's that, 8 inches? About the last 8 inches, basically, which is a bit of a crappy design, in all honesty, because don't forget, that caliper does actually swing. It moves slightly when you apply the brake. Only a little bit, but, this has to flex every single time you use the brake. That's not ideal, is it? Because it does work hard, and after a while. It should have, if anything, it should have like a pig's tail on it, like we used to have on the little Suzuki Jeeps, but it doesn't. So, anyway. So, one of the problems that I noticed when I took this whole thing apart is that the union, what we call it in England, the union, didn't really screw into the caliper very many turns. It was like 2 or 3 turns and it came out, and I was like, ooh, that's not a lot, to be honest. And I don't have any more of this thread type union, unfortunately. I've only got the fine metric ones. But if you look here, well, okay, can you spot the difference? I'll try and give you a bit of a background so you can see it. There, look. What's the difference? Well, pretty obvious. The difference is this one has got about a 3mm extension of no thread. So of course, that's half your threads have already gone when you try and put this one in. So I'm going to have to modify this. I'm going to have to just cut off that extra protrusion, and then just put a drill bit in the end to give it a little bit of a chamfer to accept the flare of the brake pipe. Basically, wait, actual fact, that one hasn't even got it. Look, maybe it should have. Maybe I'll just do that one at the same time. So I'll get those cleaned up, modified, and we've got a bit of new. It took me ages to find this. I've done brake pipes for a long time. New bit of conifer, we call this, which is basically like it's not just copper, it's like an alloy stuff. It's very good. I like it a lot. It cleans up really nice and shiny, Alan, so it'll look good on your bike. And then we can get it made up and get the ends put on and everything, and then get it bent into position, and hopefully it'll look nice when it's all finished. Once that's done, then I can bleed the brakes up, and I can use .4 fluid in it because it's backwards compatible with the .3 that the bike originally had. And then that's the end of the job. So let me do what I need to do to these. I'll show you how to flare up the brake pipe. Even though there's a video already on the channel about flaring brake pipes, what the hell, you might as well join me, mightn't you? And then when we get it put on the bike, I can get it bled up, and well, that'll be the end of the video. We'll have finished it by then, won't we? It's usually quite an easy way of doing stuff. When you've got a lathe, it's normally using the lathe that does it. No, other way. A little bit more. Oh, that'll do nicely. Good job. Right, let's get rid of that one. See, look at that. It's pretty good, isn't it? That'll work. Well, that was brilliant. Super quick. and it achieved exactly what I wanted to do. So we've now got two cleaned up, modified unions that we know are going to fit the bike and give us the maximum amount of thread possible into the caliper and into the actual the flexi pipe end as well. Okay, time to put some flares on. Not used this for ages. I won't say since I last made the last video, which was years ago. I haven't used it for a while. Right, option one. We've only got three possibilities, so I think it's that one. Only one way to find out. Now these are a concave flare, so we've got two processes to do. You put the pipe in till it's level. There we go. You want a close-up, don't you? All right then. The close-up with me getting it wrong. Right, so the plan of attack is, first of all, make sure you get your nipple put on your bit of pipe first, or your union on your pipe before you start this, because sometimes you can't, it's a bit harder to wheel them all the way down the pipe, especially if it's a long pipe. Right, the pipe should go in and be level with the edge of the die, I suppose you'd call that. Crank that up. Right, option one, in we go, hey up, maybe it's that one. Yes it is, right, plonker. Okay, so just in you go until it's, yeah, there's a bit of resistance there, and then we've got to flick it around to option number two to turn that into a concave one. There we go. Right. If all goes to plan, I won't have to redo this bit of the video. Oh, not bad. Where are we? Where the hell's the camera? There we are, look. I reckon that'll work, don't you? Yeah, it's not bad at all. It'll do me. This is turning out to be a much longer afternoon doing Alan's bike than I actually anticipated. It is now 5:30 and I've been going since noon. The joys of making a video, everything takes so much longer, but that's alright, because I enjoy doing the videos for you guys and girls. So we've got the pipe. We'll go over to the bike now. We're going to just wind this in temporary into the flexi, and then we'll sort of just get an idea of how long this pipe needs to be, because I need to cut it down and obviously put the flare on the other end. But not forgetting, and you've got to remind me, because I do forget sometimes, you've got to put the other union on the pipe first before you flare it. Otherwise, you get to start all over again. Right, to the bike. So the pipe comes around the back of the fork between the tyre, well, the mudguard, and the actual fork, which first of all makes it quite tight. So it needs a bit of a bend in it. So we'll just do that. So what I like about this copper pipe is you can actually just form it with your fingers. We need that to straighten up again. There we go, look. I'm not the best at doing this. It's an art, is what it is. Right, needs a lot more of a step. Okay, bear with me. Dum dum dum. And the trick is to give it not one bend in one place, but to curve it. My thumbs are quite good at curving things. I don't know why, but I've got the curving gene. Well, mister, you've definitely got enough on there now, without blocking the camera too much. There we go. Right. Let's just see if we can get that wound in there, just to... It should wind in quite happily. Oh, there we are, look, it's already in. Right, so some minor adjustments on that one required. We're not far off. Now, obviously it doesn't want to touch anything, that's the important thing, otherwise it will chatter. So we're going to bring that in a bit more, so it's like missing everything now. And the goal is to get to here. Now we could come straight across like that, which will probably look a bit crap. So I think we need to come down, along and in. Then again, oh there we go. Sorry, we're going here, aren't we? That's not too bad. Right. So we're going to bend that down. Now we can't put the last bits of bends on because we need to put a flare on it. So I reckon if we cut it about there, get a pen. Let's mark it with a pen, Andy. Now don't make it too short. So we're going to come down and then we're going to have a straight going down, I reckon probably about there. We can always lose a little bit and I can always make it shorter. You can't make it any longer. That's the problem. Right, so let's get that whizzed it back out again. Cool, right. Let's go and cut this pipe off. Now, when you're cutting brake pipe, you've got to use a proper pipe cutter, otherwise you get burrs and all sorts of crap. And they're not expensive, so get one. You'll thank me one day. And you want to allow about an extra 5mm for the, well, 3mm for the flare maybe. But I did allow for that before, so we're all good. Much better than steel pipe, to be honest. There we go. You get a nice finish on the end, you see, look. Perfect. Now, what we've got to do, we've got to put on the other union before we forget. Now all we need now is another flare on there. Easy. Jeez, it's getting late now. I'm getting hungry. When I get hungry, I get grumpy. And I try to rush things to get finished. It'll take me about an hour to pack up, so it's going to be at least 7 o'clock before I get any food. And I've not had any lunch yet either, so I'm already a bit grumpy. Right, that'll do. She's going to be rusty as this old tool. Sat in its box doing nothing. Okay. Right, so option 1, 3/16, in we go. That'll do. Option 2. Done. Let's hope it's right, because, you know, this is the more critical one. What have we got? Oh, I think that'll work. I reckon that'll do the trick. Somebody's going to tell me off for that, but I reckon it'll work. Right. Oh, little whisker, look. It's alright, it's not in the way. To the bike. Now, I have no idea how much of this footage I'm going to use. It all depends how professional I look doing this, because I'm not the greatest, like I said before. Just got to make sure you're not catching on anything at all. Okay, so we really need to come a bit more, so I think a bigger bend on there. Don't do that. You stay in there, mate. Now, I want it to sit about there, really. So, okay, or a bend there then. I just need to lose a bit of the length. That's what I'm trying to do at the moment. Well, that's very good. Almost, we're just about to touch this bolt here, so we need more bend on there. You see, we're about ½ an inch too far. So we really need to bend, move that bend a bit further up. I know you can get tools for this, but in all honesty, I find this a lot easier. Do it around my fingers, you see. Oh, we're coming together now. I can see some editing coming on with this. Hang on a minute. Where's my special tool? There, look, pipe bendy thing. So, I think we're on the top one from memory. Right. Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. I've used this for years. I used to use it all the time. In fact, I might just be able to do it with the bottom half actually. There we go. I'll bring that back out again. I'm just trying to move the bend a bit further up. Oh, we're nearly there, look. I think we'll whack it in, get this end fixed. Oh, look, it's looking really good. Right, so we need a 11mm spanner. Right, so just going to very carefully wind that in. There we go, look, a lot more turns now, notice, on the threads. Much better. That should do nicely. Right, and just some final tweaks to this. Oh, yes. Very neat, I like that. I think that's, I would give that 90%. It's not perfect, but it's about 90%. Right, get this one tweaked up. Right, we need a spanner for that now, 17 I think. Hopefully I'm right. Yes, just. One more. That'll do. That'll do, grommets. Coolio. And it's not rubbing on anything. I reckon that'll do, grommets. I reckon that'll work just nice. Okay, brakes to bleed up. In fact, shall I give you a little close-up? Here you go then, bit of a close-up. The focus is going to be a bit weird because it's all very shiny stuff and phones don't, well, cameras don't like shiny stuff. I think that's not bad for a first attempt on one of these bikes. I think it looks pretty tidy. You can definitely tell, oh, what the hell's leaking? Is it water? It is. There's water behind the... Where's my screwdriver? God, there's always something in there. Nope. Maybe I'll put it away. Hang on. Ooh, tour of the workshop now. Yes, there we are. Bloody water sat in the... sat under here. Wow, look at that. That's not good. Give that a dry out later on. Okay, so it's not brake fluid anyway that's leaking. Right, so there you go. We've got a nice gap. Just trying to get it to focus for you down there, look. If we come around here, you can see running through that gap there between the mudguard and the fork, we've got a gap all the way around under there. So yeah, hey, not bad. And the, you know, it's all been polished up my fingers while I've been working it, so I double bonus. Okay, time to get it bled up. That'll do, Gromit. Just before I sign off the video, let's do the same test we did when it had the old bracket on the bike, and I would spin the wheel and you would see about 5mm of lift on the caliper. It would ride up on the disc because of all the movement on that pivot. So we'll do the same test now with the new parts, and we'll see if there's any noticeable lift whatsoever. Right, back to the bike. So what you're looking for is movement of the caliper in the upwards direction as I apply the brake. It was horrendous before, and I can't really see from where I am. Can you see anything? It looked pretty good from where I was. So there you go. It looks pretty fixed to me. It's a million times better than it was when we first got the bike. I'm telling you that now. If you don't believe me, go and check the video. It was quite a shock. In fact, it was so bad. I had a gut feeling that it just wasn't acceptable, but I had to speak to quite a few people before I really got to the bottom of whether or not it was okay. The feedback I got was, oh, well, they're all like it. That's just how they are, Andy. Just let it go. And it was niggling me away, and I couldn't let it go. And I mean, once we found that bracket, wherever it was, hang on. Once we found that the bracket, that aluminium bracket had been running on the disc, this bit here, you know, in there somewhere there. Look, you see that shiny bit there, that ridge? That's the disc that's cut into there because there's been so much movement on that arm. That's absolute proof that it wasn't acceptable. And there's nothing really in the manual to say how much is too much as regards movement on that pivot. So anyway, it's done now. We've rebuilt the caliper, not popped the piston out because it was all working fine. I didn't want to go down that road. If the caliper's working okay, you know, retractions there and everything, just leave it alone. Parts are getting hard to find, and what you can find takes bloody ages to get to New Zealand. So I try to minimize the number of parts and cost for this repair. Anyway, it's done. Mudguard's on, wheels in, and we've even made up that brake pipe. And we've even been on the lathe today. I never thought we'd actually get on the lathe during this video, but it's amazing how useful a piece of kit like that is. And it only cost me 1,500 New Zealand dollars, and that was, I don't know, 9 years ago. It's done a lot of work. It's more than paid for itself many, many times over. Anyway, crew, we've got one more step closer to getting Alan's CB750 K2 back on the road. Very, very happy. The next video is going to be tackling the wiring, specifically the ignition wiring. We've highlighted so many faults with the ignition wiring. We're going to make some modifications, put a relay in there, give it a direct feed to the coils. We need to get the best possible spark. We've got some brand new Dana coils to go on. We've got electronic ignition to fit to the bike. We're going to bin those old crappy points and condensers. It's going to be bloody awesome when it's finished. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, why not click on subscribe, and then YouTube will send you an email as and when I upload any new videos. Obviously, don't forget to ring the bell and turn notifications on. You'll also find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Patreon. With the Patreon, you can drop on there, become a patron to the channel if you like. You can read all about the history of the channel. There's profiles of all the gorgeous tool girls on there too, and lots of photos, and I think there's even some video you can download too. What else? If you wanted to support the channel in other ways, you can do that directly through PayPal, and it's andymechanic@live.co.uk. That's right, .co.uk, because I'm from England, although I'm living in New Zealand now. I know it's confusing. It confuses me sometimes. What else? There's also Zazzle. You can drop onto the Zazzle website and you can buy merch to do with Andy Mechanic on there. There's mugs, tool girl mugs, leggings. There's all sorts of really cool stuff, even key rings and things. Bunch of stickers for your toolbox. Have a look around. You know, if there isn't something you like and you want the logo putting on, flick me an email through and I'll see what I can come up with for you. Okay, crew. Well, until next time, I'll see you around. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Over and out. You get the flip.
Oh,